I was in my friend's guest room, watching my place through my phone's security cameras. I could hear moaning and the bed creaking. My fiancée seemed to be with my best man and groomsman from last night's bachelor party. We had been partying on the Gold Coast since Friday, races on Saturday and a wild casino night. Sunday, we chilled at the resort pool. Tom and Carl left early Sunday, and later, hotel security kicked us out over a found bag of pills and noise complaints. Despite trying, even with a lawyer friend's help, we couldn't stay. We couldn't find other rooms because of the busy weekend, so we flew back to Sydney late Sunday. My groomsman convinced me not to go home, but to keep the party going at Tony's place since I was off work until Wednesday. I was over the drinking, and I avoid pills. I'm more about staying in control, but I joined them out of appreciation for their efforts. We ended up at Tony's after catching a cab. Georgia, my fiancée, was at her bachelorette party in Sydney. I tried calling her, but it went to voicemail. She had moved into my new penthouse a couple of months ago since it didn't make sense for her to renew her lease. Her strict Catholic parents liked me enough, thanks to my bank job. At Tony's, everyone was knocked out quickly from mixing drinks. I went to sleep, but got a surprising text from my downstairs neighbor instead of Georgia. "Can you keep it down? Some of us work tomorrow," the text said. Confused, I texted back that he had the wrong number. He quickly replied, "Just quiet her down or gag her." Impressive texting back with all that noise. Now really confused, I figured he thought he was texting the right number. Why? Luckily, I could check from where I was. My penthouse had cameras installed by the previous owner, a wealthy Singaporean's daughter. I could access them on my phone, a setup done when I moved in. I logged in and checked the living room camera first. It showed empty beer bottles, wine glasses, a bong, and a bag of pills on the table, clothes scattered around, but no one in sight. Noise from another room made me switch to the bedroom camera. The bedroom, lit by moonlight, showed a trio tangled up on my bed. One voice said, "I've missed you." "I've missed you too, Tom," came George's reply. I was shocked. My best man Tom and my fiancée together, and clearly this wasn't new. "Doesn't Adam satisfy you?" Tom asked. "He's too big. Keep going, Carl. I'm almost there," she responded. Stunned, I sat down. My fiancée was cheating with my best man and another groomsman. I was furious, but knew I needed to be smart, not rash. I checked the security system was recording. It kept 24 hours of footage. The video was a bit fuzzy due to clouds, but Tom and Carl's voices were clear, discussing past hookups with Georgia. She was engaging too, giving me enough evidence. After they finished, Georgia went to the bathroom and the guys got drinks and came back, continuing to talk and touch, adding to the evidence. "I want to bed you in your wedding gown," Tom said. "I won't have it until the day before, so you'll have to wait till after the honeymoon," Georgia replied, always planning ahead. "No way! We're talking about on the wedding day," Carl chimed in, being a jerk. "And how do you plan to pull that off, you naughty boys?" Georgia chuckled. "I scoped out the reception venue with Adam. The ballroom has a side room where the band plays. We'll take turns distracting Adam while the others entertain you," Tom explained, feeling clever. "All four of you?" Georgia asked, amused. "Would you want it any other way?" Carl chuckled. "I guess not. You know I won't be on birth control then. Adam wants to start a family right away. You guys will be gambling with my fertile eggs. Just thinking about it gets me heated," Georgia confessed. "How had I missed all this?" "Me too. So get down there so I can show how hot it's going to be," Carl ordered. "Take it easy, Carl. We've got all night and most of tomorrow. I'm not picking Adam up until 5 p.m., Georgia remarked. "Don't be uptight, girl. Get into it. You know you want to," Tom urged, nudging Georgia's hand into Carl's lap. She started engaging with them, the room filled with slurping sounds and their groans. Carl took to her back while Tom watched. Georgia was loud and energetic, explaining the neighbors' frustration. I turned off the security feed, having seen enough. The recordings were safely stored on a hard drive hidden in my closet. Needing a plan for revenge, I went to the living room where Tony and Jeff were still out cold. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and noticed an old newspaper article about drink spiking, which gave me an idea. Just then, my phone rang again. It was my neighbor saying he'd reported a noise complaint to the police. Perfect timing. I called the police myself. "You've reached NSW police. How can we help?" "My God, you need to get to my apartment. I think my fiancée is being attacked." I feigned panic. "Please remain calm. Can you give us some details?" "How can I calm down? Send someone now." "Why do you think she's being attacked?" "My neighbor's complaining about noise, but I'm not even there." "How can there be noise if I'm not there? Please, hurry." "How do you know about the complaint?" she asked calmly. "He texted me about his complaint and that he's calling you. Please, you have to send help." I pleaded. What's the address for the noise complaint? She continued. This was worse than dealing with a call center or automated voice systems. Thank goodness it wasn't a real emergency. I provided my home address. Please hold for a moment. 30 seconds later, she returned. I'm transferring your call now. Another 30 seconds passed before a male voice came on the line. This is Senior Sergeant Potts from the Intimate Crimes Division. May I know who's speaking? Oh, thank goodness! I'm Adam Spencer. Please send help for my fiancé. Something terrible is going on. I faked starting to cry. We have a unit nearby. We just need to confirm something. Don't take this the wrong way, but the noise complaint mentioned, it sounded like closeness. So, is there a chance someone else is there with your fiancé? Or, maybe she has someone else over? Whining wasn't getting me anywhere. Time to try getting angry. We're getting married in 3 weeks. What do you think? If all this delay causes her harm in any way, I'm going to sue you and the department. I'll go on every TV show and write to every newspaper using your name. Please calm down, sir. We'll check this out. What's your fiancé's name, and what was she supposed to be doing tonight? I was ready for this one. Georgia, she was out with friends for her bachelorette party in King's Cross. The paper said the offenders were targeting that area. Okay, there's a unit nearby. They'll swing by. Are you calling from your mobile? We'll need the number to keep you updated. Yes. Should I go there too? No, please stay put until we reach out. And with that, he hung up. That didn't go as planned. I wanted them to burst in and cause a scene. I doubted the ape claim would stick, but explaining the pills on the coffee table would be tough. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then my phone buzzed with another text. It was from my downstairs neighbor. Sorry, man. Thought it was you up there. Police are on their way now, with magnums and helmets and stuff. Hope George is okay. Praying for you both. Wow, they fell for it. I quickly checked my security feed again. I had to see this. When I turned on the bedroom camera, I couldn't believe my eyes. Tom and Carl had used a couple of my work ties to bind Georgia's legs and arms to the bed frame, taking turns having closeness with her. She seemed to enjoy it, but their kinky game was about to blow up in their faces. I switched to the living area and aimed the camera at the door, but there was no action yet. Georgia started screaming again, which I hoped would motivate the police to act swiftly. After 3 minutes, I started to doubt my neighbor's message, but then the door slowly opened. 2 officers entered and checked the living area. They signaled to 4 others waiting outside, and they all moved toward the bedroom. I went back to the bedroom camera, and Tom was still at it with Georgia while Carl was pleasuring himself over her face. They were completely unaware of what was about to happen, and then chaos erupted. The police burst through the door with lights blazing. They shouted, "Armed police, get on the floor now!" Tom and Carl were caught off guard. One of them was kicked in the chest, sending him sprawling. Tom kept going despite the chaos until another officer grabbed him by the hair and pulled him off Georgia, leaving him lying on the floor next to Carl. What a sight! Carl and Tom were lying without clothes on the floor, with 2 cops sitting on them, handcuffing their hands behind their backs. Georgia tied to the bed, surrounded by strangers with magnums. One of the officers covered her with a blanket and started untying her while they pulled Carl and Tom to their feet and escorted them out the door. Finally, the guys found their voices. "What the heck is going on?" Tom yelled. "You sick perverts will pay for this. You'll be the ones suffering where you're headed," a cop growled as he pushed Tom against the door frame. "She was into it. It wasn't ape," Carl interjected, but he regretted it when another officer slammed the butt of his tool into Carl's stomach, causing him to fall forward onto his face. They escorted the guys out of the room, and a female officer came in and took charge of Georgia, who was now free and wrapped in a blanket. She sat Georgia down in a chair by the window and spoke gently, reassuring the bewildered Georgia. "Don't worry, Georgia, you're safe now. The senior sergeant will contact your fiancé and have him meet us at the hospital." "The hospital?" "Yes, we need to get you checked out. Do you want your mother to be there too? The hospital has a great team to support you through this difficult time. They're experienced in helping victims of offense." Georgia looked stunned, like a deer caught in headlights. "Ape," she stuttered. "Don't worry, honey, they can't harm you anymore. Just take your time. The paramedics will be here soon." This was going to be intriguing. Would she accuse them of ape, or try to lie her way out of it? The pressure to choose would be immense. Either claim offense or admit to consensual closeness and be labeled as promiscuous. Everyone in that room knew she was engaged. I switched cameras to check on Tom and Carl. They were sitting on the couch in their underwear, while an officer in plain clothes questioned them about the pills, but they remained silent. "Come on, guys, we've found a large amount of pills here. You're likely beyond personal use and into the dealing territory. That could land you in prison for at least 3 years, even before considering the ape accusations. We're just saying it wasn't ape. Beyond that, we're exercising our right to remain silent and waiting for our lawyer, Tom said firmly. Help us out now, and we can all wrap this up early, the officer urged again. The guys stayed silent and stone-faced. Fine, have it your way, the officer turned to his colleagues. Take them to the van, get them to the station, and let them make their phone call. The armed officers lifted Tom and Carl off the couch and escorted them out the door. Meanwhile, the other officer gestured for the female officer to join him outside the bedroom. They conferred quietly, making it impossible for me to hear. When they finished, the female officer returned to Georgia, while the other officer dialed a number. Suddenly, my phone started ringing. Hello? I tried to sound as worried as possible. Mr. Spencer, it's Senior Sergeant Potts. What's happened? Have you found Georgia? Is she okay? What? My rapid-fire questions were cut off by the sergeant. Calm down, Mr. Spencer. We have your fiancée. She'll be taken to the hospital soon. Oh my God, is she all right? Yes, it's just a precautionary checkup. I'll give you more details at the hospital. We should reach St. Vincent's in about 10 minutes. Call me when you arrive and I'll find you to brief you on our operation. Before I could respond with another frantic question, he hung up. I called for a taxi and left Tony's place. Everything had turned out better than I expected, but I was unsure about the police's take on the situation. Would they believe Georgia or Tom and Carl? I needed to stay alert to keep this situation under control. At the hospital, a constable greeted me and led me to a room off to the side. Inside, a tall, thin man with a prominent nose was on the phone. The constable told me to wait, then poked his head into the room to inform the man of my presence. After finishing his call, he approached me with his hand outstretched. I'm Senior Sergeant Potts, he said, shaking my hand. I'm Adam Spencer. Where's my fiancée? She's with the doctor at the moment. You'll be able to see her soon. But first, I'd like to have a quick word with you. He gestured to a chair at the desk and took a seat across from me. Clearing his throat, he continued, Earlier tonight, 5 armed officers entered your apartment and apprehended 2 males who had your fiancée tied to your bed. They were having closeness. We have them at the police station and they're currently being questioned. Your fiancée. Georgia, I interjected. Georgia is currently being examined by medical staff and giving statements. She'll be done soon. In the meantime, I have a few questions to help us understand everything, Senior Sergeant Potts explained. Is all this really necessary? Shouldn't Georgia's well-being come first? I just want to see her, I protested. You'll see her soon, sir, but I need to clarify a few things first. He ran his hand through his hair, then leaned forward. Where were you tonight? Why does that matter? I asked innocently. If you were home, Georgia might not be here now. I get it. Well, I was at a friend's house. It was my bachelor party this weekend. We got back late from Brisbane, and one of my groomsmen insisted we continue the celebration at his place, I explained. Where exactly was this? Renwick, I think, or one of the nearby eastern suburbs. What time did your neighbor contact you about the noise? I'm not sure. Let me check my phone. The text should have a timestamp, I said, pulling out my phone and scrolling through messages. At 11:45 p.m. I want to show you a couple of pictures on my phone. They're of the men we have in custody. Let me know if you recognize them, he said. Is this normal procedure? Just a hunch. These 2 don't fit the profile of offenders. They look more like young office workers to me, he explained, showing me the images on his phone. I tried to appear shocked, then angry. What? Is this some kind of joke? Why do you have pictures of Tom and Carl? I demanded. Who are Tom and Carl? Tom's my best man. Carl's one of my groomsmen. What's going on? They were the 2 men we found without clothes at your apartment. Why weren't they at your party? They left Brisbane early. They said they had work tomorrow, or so they claimed. I slumped in my chair, trying to look defeated. Someone spoke from behind me. Hey, Mick, can I talk to you? It was the policewoman from my apartment. Can you step outside for a minute, Mr. Spencer? She asked. I got up and headed for the door, leaving my phone on the chair. I had set it up to record my conversation with the sergeant, thinking it might come in handy later. They chatted for a while, then both left together. I'll be back with your fiancée. Georgia, shortly, she said as she left. I grabbed my phone, put in my earpiece, and listened to their conversation. The policewoman began, We've done all the checks. I've taken down a statement, but she hasn't signed it yet. What's your gut feeling on this? The sergeant inquired. Well, it's a bit off. She's definitely had closeness, but I'm not sure consent was an issue. Her story sounds scripted, like something from a TV show. Maybe she was just having one last fling before her wedding, she explained. I'm leaning that way too. The guys in custody more like preppy types. We have enough with the pills to hold them for the night. But her boyfriend, there's something off, like he's trying too hard to act shocked. How should we proceed? The sergeant pondered. Come with me and read George's statement. Maybe you'll think of something to ask that I missed. I've been playing the good cop, so before she signs, you can talk about the consequences of giving a false statement, she suggested. All right, how tough can I be? Will she freak out? She's a potential victim, even if we're not entirely sure, he asked. She doesn't seem traumatized. She's more likely feeling guilty or worried about getting caught. Maybe you can scare her a bit to get the truth. Let's go find out then. The chair scaped as the sergeant stood up. Then there was silence until I stopped the recording. I wondered what Georgia would do. Checking my watch, I realized it was time to set my revenge plan in motion. I scrolled through my contacts, found the number, and dialed. Hey, it's Adam. What are you doing up at this hour? Eric asked. It's a long story. I'll tell you later over a beer. But I was wondering if your column for tomorrow's edition is finalized, I inquired. Just about. The start of the financial year is always slow for gossip. Got any juicy tidbits? Eric's interest was sparked. Would you want to hear about two young guys facing pills and intimate offense charges, both on the fast track to the boardroom? I teased. Absolutely. That's the kind of gossip I've been craving. Can I use their names? Eric asked eagerly. If you want to avoid lawsuits, don't use names. Keep it in the guess who, don't sue section. Eric usually ended his columns with a guess who, don't sue section, where he'd drop juicy but unconfirmed gossip without naming names. During morning tea breaks, office workers would try to figure out who was being talked about. Come on, spill the beans! I need some background to craft my cryptic clues, Eric urged. It's Tom and Carl, I replied, trying to stay composed. Your best man and groomsman? You're throwing your buddies under the bus? Who did they go after? Your mom? Eric joked. My fiancé, or should I say my ex-fiancé? I said bitterly. Oh, Eric paused, his response unexpected. Did you already know about this? I asked. No, but I'm not entirely surprised, Eric admitted cautiously. What's that supposed to mean? I raised my voice, earning a stern look from a passing nurse. Well, there have been rumors about Georgia and her boss for a while. I couldn't confirm it, so I didn't mention it, Eric explained. She's sleeping with her boss too? I half shouted. Probably, but the story was she was offered as an incentive to potential clients, Eric said sheepishly. Damn! How could I have missed all this? It's called love, Adam. So do you want me to go all out on this? Eric asked. That's why I called. Let's expose those jerks. It's a deal. We exchanged farewells and hung up. A policewoman strolled down the hallway toward me. She had a confident stride and a great figure. Oh, the allure of women in uniform. She stopped in front of me. I'm Constable Haven. I specialize in helping victims offense. Can I have a quick chat? Georgia will be here soon, and hopefully I can assist both of you in overcoming this trauma together. I wasn't convinced, but I smiled and listened to her advice, which felt long until she knelt down to my level. Mostly, I found myself looking at her chest. When Georgia and Sergeant Potts came over, I stood up and played the worried fiancé, hugging Georgia as she cried. I comforted her, promising everything would be okay, even though I was secretly planning. 3 of my bridal party were already in trouble, but I had plans for the others. Both officers gave me their cards before we left. On the ride home, Georgia kept thanking me and telling me how much she loved me. Back at the apartment, while I started cleaning, Georgia wanted to be close, but I was done being intimate with her. I decided to schedule a doctor's visit soon. Come on, baby, I need you to cuddle me, she begged. I need to clean up first. You go to bed, I'll be there soon. She finally gave up and went to bed due to exhaustion. I then downloaded and reviewed the video from my security system. It clearly showed there was no offense, setting up one charge for filing a false report. The guys were just getting high and let slip that they got their pills from Tony. I knew he used pills but didn't know he was selling. That meant a pills charge for him. They also mentioned a big buy they funded with Tony, planning to double their money, which could mean serious charges for possession with intent to distribute. They might avoid jail with good lawyers, but their careers were ruined. I was still figuring out if Jeff was involved when I decided to send the CCTV footage to the police. Originally planning to email it later, I chose to call early, around 3 a.m., hoping to leave a voicemail but showing I wasn't hiding anything. Surprisingly, Sergeant Potts answered. Hello, Senior Sergeant Potts? He sounded irritated. I hoped I hadn't disturbed his sleep. It's Adam, Adam Spencer. We met at the hospital when I picked up my fiancée. I hope I didn't wake you? No, not at all. I'm on the night shift. I don't sleep until 8 a.m. His mood wasn't getting any sunnier. Listen, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but there are 3 CCTV cameras connected to a hard drive in my apartment. I sniffled and cleared my throat, trying to sell it. Oh, really? That grabbed his attention. Why didn't you mention this earlier? Have you checked it out? I could almost picture him suddenly sitting up, leaning forward with anticipation. I guess with everything going on, I forgot. I have. I paused again and sniffled. Sorry, it's tough. I looked at it and I stopped abruptly and the sergeant took the bait. What? What did you see, Adam? Adam, are you still there? I don't think it was Ape. Oh God, they came in together laughing and kissing. I let out a choked sob and pretended to cry. Was there anything about the pills? The sergeant pressed. He already suspected the Ape claim was false, but he still seemed eager to pin something on the boys. I didn't watch much after that, but they were putting them on the coffee table. I lied. I need to see that footage. There are 2 high-powered lawyers here making a lot of noise about lawsuits. Can you send it to me? I could email it, I think. Hold on and I'll give you an address. We need to get it quickly. He gave me the address, then hung up. I went to my computer and sent a copy of the entire footage from the 3 cameras. I went to the spare room and tried to get some sleep, but just ended up tossing and turning with my eyes closed. I couldn't believe I had misjudged my girlfriend and my buddies so badly. Around 5, my phone rang. Sorry, I hope I didn't wake you from a deep sleep. It was Sergeant Potts, and he sounded much happier. I was in bed, but I'm having trouble sleeping, I replied shortly. Yes, well, that's understandable, given the circumstances. Look, I won't keep you. Could we grab a coffee when I finish my shift at 8? There are a few updates I want to discuss with you. Sure, I don't have any plans. My response was tinged with bitterness. There's a coffee shop in Surrey Hills, just down from the Oxford Tavern. Do you know it? Yes, I don't go in there much. Too many cops. Yes, I suppose there are. Well, I'll see you at 8. He hung up and I went back to tossing and turning, trying to sleep. I got up at 7 a.m. and took a shower. Georgia was still asleep, or at least pretending to be. I doubted she was eager to talk to me until she had a chance to come up with a story. I turned on the morning TV shows, hoping to distract myself from the last 24 hours. The top story on the 7.30 news quickly grabbed my attention. The Pills Squad police conducted a dawn raid in the beachside suburb of Bronte. A 2-story house was raided and 2 men were detained in connection with an inner-city pills ring. Neighbors of the house said the occupant was a nice young guy who worked for a bank in the city. Police aren't giving any more details yet, but confirmed that a large quantity of pills had been seized. They also mentioned that they were holding other individuals, who they hope can assist with their investigation. Oh yeah, serves you right, you jerks. Sergeant Potts would be pleased. I got dressed and was about to leave to meet the sergeant when I remembered my chat with the gossip columnist. I went back to the computer and checked the online edition. At the bottom of the CBD column, under the bold heading, Guess Who Don't Sue, which high-profile PR exec and socialite's upcoming wedding plans are on hold after she was caught red-handed with a couple of members of the bridal party? Unfortunately, her soon-to-be ex-fiancé and rising star in the private banking world wasn't one of them. Delicious. That would surely have the office workers in the city gossiping at the water cooler this morning. Suddenly, I thought of George's parents. They were good people and didn't deserve to find out about the impending troubles secondhand. I called them right away, and Jack, George's father, answered. Hi, Adam. How's the Bucks weekend going? It ended early after some trouble in Brisbane. Can I meet up with you and Janice sometime this morning? What's wrong, Adam? I sensed concern in his voice. I chose not to discuss the details over the phone with Jack, instead inviting him to meet in person later in the morning at a pastry shop near his old office. He agreed, cautioning me to wait for all the facts before making any decisions. Despite his advice, I felt confident in what I knew and left for our meeting, enjoying the mild, sunny weather in Sydney. At the coffee shop, Sergeant Potts updated me on the case progress. Although the CCTV footage wasn't usable in court, it helped the police pressure the suspects into turning on each other during separate interrogations. This led to a raid on Tony's house where they found more pills. Tony broke under pressure, offering to name his supplier in exchange for a deal. The suspects were scheduled for a bail hearing, with Tony possibly joining them depending on his cooperation with the prosecutor. The hearing was set to be public, much to the displeasure of their lawyers. As the conversation shifted, Sergeant Potts hinted at his suspicion about my remote access to the CCTV and its logs, suggesting he might investigate further. However, he reassured me that his focus wasn't on me, but on understanding my intentions toward Georgia. The sergeant mentioned that Georgia could be charged with making a false statement, though the charge might not hold. He suggested he could pursue the charge if I wanted revenge or let it slide to avoid unnecessary paperwork, leaving the decision to me. After finishing my juice, I stepped outside into the sunshine and decided to go to work looking disheveled to fuel office gossip, despite the personal embarrassment aiming to undermine Tom and Carl's standing at the bank. Upon entering the bank, I was met with whispers and subtle nudges as I headed to the elevator, where an awkward encounter between a secretary and the mail guy briefly silenced the usual chatter. Alone with the secretary at the CEO's floor, she offered me her number for support, which I discarded after she left. I then proceeded to the CEO's office, where his secretary, usually more standoffish, showed unexpected sympathy. She informed me Mr. Turnbull was finishing a call and would see me soon. After a brief wait, I was invited in. Mr. Turnbull, surprised to see me, acknowledged the unusual circumstances prompting my visit. I explained that I needed additional time off due to personal matters involving other employees and a PR firm we worked with. I detailed the events of my prematurely ended bachelor party, including the discovery of my fiancée and 2 colleagues with pills by the police. Mr. Turnbull told me to take whatever time I needed and mentioned we'd touch base again on Monday. He was clearly worried when the PR firm came up, and he said they'd start an internal investigation, hinting there might be more trouble involving another executive. I caught a taxi to meet Georgia's parents at the bakery. While waiting, I checked my security system. Georgia was in the kitchen in her lingerie, texting and then letting someone in. It was Jeff, another groomsman. In the living room, they seemed cautious around each other, with Georgia being more forward. While I was out, Jack explained he came alone because his wife, Janice, was stressed over a gossip column about us. He wanted to sue the writer, but I explained it was all true and too costly to fight. I told him about the incident with Georgia and the groomsmen. He thought they had forced her until I showed him the live security footage, which made him think I was making it all up. Using his phone, I called Georgia as she reached for hers, showing Jack the ongoing situation. He realized the wedding couldn't happen, feeling overwhelmed and worried about his wife. We left the bakery to clear our heads, avoiding talking about Georgia. Jack wanted to know when I'd tell her everything and asked to be kept in the loop, especially before taking any severe steps. After an awkward goodbye, Jack left in a taxi and I continued walking, contemplating my next steps. I revisited my CCTV feed, noting that the scene had ended with Georgia dressing and Jeff preparing to leave. Jeff was engaged to Penny Ryan Hill, daughter of a wealthy Australian with substantial mining interests, potentially jeopardizing his personal and professional future. I considered using the CCTV footage to disrupt Jeff's upcoming wedding and possibly end his career with Penny's family business. Meanwhile, I planned to leverage Georgia's cooperation for my own ends, confident that I held enough influence over her actions. Heading home, I was curious about how Georgia would handle our situation. But when I got there, Georgia was gone. I hadn't expected that, but it delayed our inevitable confrontation. It also gave me time to put together a highlight reel for Penny. Jeff's conversation with Georgia when he arrived was interesting too. He was sent over by Carl and Tom's lawyers to find out what she'd told the police. Charging him with witness tampering crossed my mind, but it seemed pointless. I was sure Penny would come up with far worse punishments. He kept asking her about the pills and what she'd told the police. She said she only mentioned the ape. Jeff explained that the boys weren't being charged with ape, just pills possession and dealing. That's when she slumped onto the couch, and he moved to comfort her. So now she knew the ape story was useless, which was probably why she left the apartment. Around 5 p.m., as I was making dinner for myself, the apartment door opened. I heard the click of high heels on the wooden floor, and Georgia and one of her bridesmaids, Shelley, walked into the living area. It seemed like they were sticking together for safety. When she got closer, Georgia opened her arms for a hug and said, "Adam, sweetie, where have you been? We've been so worried." Georgia sniffled, holding back tears. I didn't hug her back, keeping my arms at my sides, trying to keep my voice steady. I've been busy talking to the police, my boss, and your dad, I replied. Georgia tensed up, caught off guard, but she tried to keep her composure. Shelley's here to explain how they spiked my drinks last night at the bachelorette party, and I got kicked out of the club. Tom and Carl were there, and they offered to take me home, and that's when they took advantage of me. She tried to hug me again, but I stepped back. Really? Is that what happened, Shelley? I said sarcastically. Yeah, just like Georgia said, it was just some fun that got out of hand, Shelley chimed in. And did you spike her coffee before she slept with Jeff this morning? I added. Shelley's mouth hung open in shock. While Georgia looked between us, searching for words, Shelley spoke first. You're on your own now, girlfriend, she spat, heading for the door. Georgia tried to stop her, but Shelley shrugged her off, delivering one last jab. I knew you liked to party, but I didn't know you were such a slut. The door slammed shut, leaving Georgia and me alone. She turned to me, tears streaming down her face, blubbering apologies and excuses. I was drunk, and I was upset this morning. It's only happened twice. Please, I'll be good. You're pathetic, I yelled, finishing the beer I had opened earlier. Only twice? I mocked, imitating Tom's voice. God, I've missed you. Then Georgia's reply. It's missed you too, Tom. Once again, Georgia looked shocked. But how did you... Remember when you moved in, and I told you about the security system and the cameras? I interrupted. Yeah, but you said you didn't use them, she replied. I don't, but they're still running 24/7. I thought the police might need a copy for evidence of your ape. But unfortunately, it just proved you were lying, I explained. Tears were streaming down her face, a constant flow running down and dropping off her cheeks. She was crouched down, leaning against the wall. Honestly, she looked pitiful. Small, sad, and pitiful. I made up my mind then. I'd ask the sergeant to drop the false statement charges, but I wouldn't tell her until I figured out why she did it. If she even knew. I went over, helped Georgia to her feet, and guided her to the kitchen table. She tried to hold on to me, but I stepped back, grabbed 2 beers from the fridge, and sat across from her. Popping open the beers, I placed one in front of her and took a sip of my own. I need you to understand, we're done, all right? I stated. She nodded silently. The cop asked if I wanted him to nail you for lying. I have to decide by 6 p.m. tonight. So you've got 30 minutes to answer my questions honestly, and I'll tell him to let you off the hook. Please, Adam, don't do this, she began, but I cut her off. Answer my questions or wait for the cops, I interrupted firmly. She nodded again, picked up the beer I gave her, and took a long gulp. A friend in the city told me you've been sleeping with your boss. Is that true? I asked. Georgia nodded once more, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. For how long? I inquired. About 9 months, she replied, sniffling loudly. You've only been there 10. Why the hell would you do that? I exclaimed. I was recruited for a new corporate team, supposed to be the top in the market, Georgia explained, sniffling again. My boss, Jeremy, called me into his office after a month. He wasn't pleased. She paused, taking another drink. Her sniffles were driving me nuts, so I grabbed a box of tissues from the sideboard. She blew her nose loudly and continued. Jeremy said I wasn't contributing enough. I told him I was working harder than anyone. He came around his desk, stood in front of me, and said I was hired for my assets, and it was time to use them. Then he started unbuttoning my blouse. Wow, that's straight up intimate offense. Why did you put up with that? Easy for you to say. You're the prodigy, youngest guy ever to snag $1 million bonus. I was on my 3rd job in 2 years trying to make my mark. Her tears were gone, replaced by anger. By sleeping with your boss? That's one way to build a reputation, but not a good one. My mouth landed us 4 big accounts. I couldn't believe she was proud of being a corporate prostitute. And now they'll kick you to the curb, and you'll have to hustle for real. I don't think so. Jeremy wanted some insurance, so I secretly recorded some of our encounters. I kept copies to protect myself. Now, that was interesting. If I could get a copy of her and Mr. Turnbull, I might be able to mess up that jerk. Where do you keep the copies? I asked, hoping it wasn't at work. On the desktop at work. Darn it, I exclaimed, slamming my beer bottle on the table. What's wrong? Georgia looked scared. I would have loved to have a copy of one with you and Mr. Turnbull. I stood up and went to the window. I've never... She trailed off, meeting my gaze. How did you find out? She finally asked. Pretty obvious, right? You're using your assets to land new clients. Our bank happens to be one of them. Is that all you want? If you're that eager to watch it, I'll just head to work and make a copy, Georgia shouted, causing her chair to tip over as she stood up. You won't even make it through the front door, I called after her. She stopped and turned back towards me. What do you mean? Your boss will be covering his tracks. You'd be greeted at the door by a security guard with a box of your stuff. There's no way they'd let you near your computer. Georgia bit her lip, a telltale sign of uncertainty. Dropping her keys back on the table, she came back towards me and slipped into the office. I peered in and found her sitting in my chair, booting up the computer. I can access my computer remotely, she declared triumphantly. I watched as she entered her access code, trying it again and again. Her shoulders slumped as she realized I was right. She'd been locked out. Damn it! She sank back into the chair, apparently defeated, but then sat up with renewed determination. There's a back door into Jeremy's computer where I put the video files. Yes, that's it. I leaned over the chair. Copy everything, I instructed. You'll need some leverage for your severance pay negotiations. More importantly, I needed something to mess up my boss's life. I left her to it, and about 20 minutes later, Georgia emerged from the office, grinning and waving a portable hard drive. Got all the juicy stuff? Did you manage to grab a copy of his incoming and outgoing emails? I asked hopefully. Yeah, but I thought you were after the spicy stuff, she teased, continuing to strut toward me. I raised my hand. Hold on. I've seen more than enough of your antics in the past 24 hours to last me a lifetime. I just need some insurance in case the bank comes after me too. But I thought maybe we could, try again. Sell everything, move overseas, start fresh. Unfortunately, there's not much fresh about you, Georgia. When I saw you with Tom and Carl, I figured maybe you were drunk. But today with Jeff, you need help, but I'm not sticking around to see how it turns out. She started crying again. I grabbed the portable hard drive and headed to the office. Georgia ran into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. The hard drive was even better than I expected. Turns out Jeremy and Mr. Turnbull were old pals. They exchanged emails about Georgia and her skills, and even had their own threesome file with her. But that wasn't the best part. They'd conspired to defraud the bank. Mr. Turnbull wanted to beef up his retirement fund, so he had Jeremy inflate the tender bid for the PR contract. Mr. Turnbull approved it, but Jeremy only documented the agreed-upon amount on his company ledger. They split the difference 50-50. I called Sergeant Potts. I thought you forgot, he said. Looking at the clock, 6:05 p.m., I replied. Nope, just wanted to make sure I made the right call. What's the decision? He asked, sounding a bit tired. Don't go after her. Things might get rough for her without it. Do you know anyone in the fraud squad? I might, he said cautiously. Why do you ask? I'll fill you in later, I said, avoiding the question. I didn't want to reveal too much. Oh boy, he chuckled. Who's in for a surprise this time? You'll see, I said before hanging up. Next, I called Georgia's dad to pick her up. I wanted to sleep in my own bed tonight. Then I sent a copy of the morning's encounter between Jeff and Georgia to Penny, his fiancée. It was tough, but I hoped it would spare her more hurt. Jack arrived about 40 minutes later. It took some time to coax Georgia out of the bedroom, but eventually she emerged and I helped pack up some of her things. They left. My phone rang. It was Eric from the paper. Did you enjoy my column today? Eric asked, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. Yeah, I replied flatly, lacking conviction. Come on, not having second thoughts, are we? I wanted to get back at them, but I'm hurting others too. I thought of Jack and Janice. There's always collateral damage in war. Who do you want me to target tomorrow? I pondered for a moment. You still there? Eric asked. Yeah, just thinking. He was like a scavenger, circling for another meal. The 2 groomsmen caught with Georgia and 1 other will be charged tomorrow with pills offenses. Sorry, mate, but 3 bankers caught with a joint won't cut it, he said, disappointment evident. Not possession charges, but importation and supply, I added. Now that's better. High-flying bankers, eh? Eric laughed. Got anything else for me, mate, or is that it? I'll be in touch if there's anything else, I said noncommittally. By then, I'd had enough for the day. I turned off my phone, disconnected the landline, shut all the blinds, and tried to get some sleep. At 9:30 the next morning, there was someone hammering on my door. It was Greg, the building supervisor. Adam, man, what's up with your phone? I've been trying to call you, he said. I just turned them off. I needed some uninterrupted sleep. What's going on? I replied, a bit annoyed. These guys have been waiting downstairs to see you for an hour. Greg stepped back, revealing one guy in a security guard uniform holding a box and another in a suit. The man in the suit stepped forward, holding a piece of paper. Mr. Adam Spencer? Yes, I confirmed. I'm from the bank's legal department. I'm here to inform you that your contract with us has been terminated under Section 112B. You've brought the bank into disrepute. Here's your severance check for 2 weeks' salary, and James has your personal belongings from your desk. He handed me a check, and the security guard placed the box on the floor. I was stunned. They were halfway back to the elevator when I snapped out of it. Hold on! I signed a new contract 3 weeks ago, guaranteeing me 9 months' wages plus 50% of my last bonus, I shouted after them. I know nothing about that, sir. If you want to take it up with the bank, I suggest you get a lawyer, the man in the suit said before heading to the elevator with the security guard. The building supervisor shrugged and followed them. Sorry, mate. I picked up the box and took it inside. It contained only the contents of my desk drawers and a few photos. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I called the lawyer who had reviewed my recent contract before I signed it. Did your new contract kick in right away? Legal stuff can go either way, you know, he said hopefully. Nope, not yet. Supposed to hit my account this Thursday, I replied. That's why they're playing hardball. They want you to fight for it. How do you want to play this? I could start legal proceedings now and maybe we'll get a hearing by the end of the month. Damn lawyers. Could we chat with my boss at the office before that? I've got something that might change his mind about their stance, I suggested. Nothing shady, right? He inquired cautiously. Nothing I've done, I reassured him. Anything missing from the box they gave you? He questioned. Wait a sec. I've got golf clubs in the storage area near the executive dining room, I realized. Perfect. Valuable? He asked. About 20 grand, give or take, I mentioned casually. Seriously? Gold-plated or what? He exclaimed. Nope, just platinum with some gold inlays. A fancy set of Honda clubs, half a set, though. Full set's around 50 grand, I explained. Wow, I'll start on getting access to them, he said. Can you do it by 1 today? I pressed. I'll try, but it's tight with my schedule, he hesitated. Meet me at the front door with the order, and you'll get the clubs, I insisted. Deal. See you there, he agreed. After breakfast, I prepped for the showdown later. Mr. Turnbull always hit the executive dining room between 12:30 and 1:30, so a scene outside would grab his attention. Before heading out, I checked the Herald website. Eric had a jab about high-flying bankers, and there was a piece on a billion-dollar heiress breaking off her engagement. I hadn't mentioned Penny and Jeff, so where did he get that? 1 o'clock rolled around, and I waited outside the bank headquarters. The lawyer arrived 5 minutes late, pulling a document from his pocket like a champ. I had to wait for the magistrates to finish their morning sessions to get this signed, but here it is, the lawyer exclaimed. What does it let me do? I inquired, as we walked toward the front door. I was aiming for general access, but the guy played hardball. It only allows you to enter the premises and grab your golf clubs, in and out, he explained. I hope that's all I need, I muttered. We reached the front door. Inside, the security guard who had returned my office belongings earlier blocked my path. Sorry, sir, I've been told to stop you from entering the building, he said, motioning for 2 other guards to join him. I held up the legal document. This is a court order granting me access to the building. Please move aside, I insisted, trying to get past him. I need to verify this first, he said, taking the order and speaking into his shoulder microphone. A couple of minutes later, the lift doors opened, and the same guy from this morning walked out. He took the court order, put on reading glasses, and quickly scanned it. Someone's been busy, he remarked, handing the order back to me. This only lets you go to the storeroom and back, no detours. He then instructed the guard, take him up to the executive storeroom and then kick him out onto the street. I headed toward the executive lifts with the guard close behind. After retrieving my clubs from the storeroom, I dropped them in the corridor and caused a commotion. Some jerk stole my fairway wood, I exclaimed, storming up the corridor toward the executive dining room. You can't go up there, sir, the guard protested, trying to grab my arm but missing. As I neared the dining room, the guard caught up and grabbed me just as Mr. Turnbull appeared in the doorway. What's all this noise? He demanded. Then recognizing me, he shouted, What's he doing in here? Sorry, sir, he had a court order, the guard said as he lifted me off the floor by my collar. I stopped struggling as Mr. Turnbull was right in front of me. Mr. Turnbull, so nice to see you too, I said sarcastically. I thought you might want to review my severance package. Not a chance, he pointed to the guard. Get this lowlife out of here, now. I fished a thumb drive out of my pocket and tossed it to him. Better have a look at that when you get a chance, but not when your wife is around, I warned. Mr. Turnbull's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Give Jeremy a ring and he might tell you, I spat. Whatever gets him out of here, Mr. Turnbull muttered dismissively. The mention of Jeremy's name hadn't fazed him. He must have thought that angle was covered. Putting the thumb drive in his pocket, he went back into the dining room. The guard began dragging me up the hallway. You have 24 hours. I think you have my mobile number, I shouted toward the closing door. I grabbed the clubs on the way back. The guard didn't release my arm until I was back out in the forecourt. My lawyer was waiting and relieved me of my clubs. I was happy enough. If I got the deal I had signed up for 3 weeks ago, I could buy another set. I got a bit worried when I hadn't heard anything before I went to bed. My phone signaled a message arriving at 11:30 p.m. Meet me at Centennial Park Coffee Shop at 6:45 a.m. Gotcha. The next morning, I got to the park at 6:30, hoping to get there first. Obviously, Mr. Turnbull had the same idea. As I was walking from one side, he came from the other. We came together awkwardly, staying about 3 meters away from each other. "What do you want for the tape?" he said angrily. "Just what I'm owed by my new contract." I matched his anger. "That contract wasn't valid until Thursday." "That's an arguable fact, and I haven't got the time for the conversation to make it through our justice system." "I never took you for a blackmailer," he growled, his face growing red. "I never thought you'd stoop so low as to mess around with your employee's fiancé," I fired back. We stood glaring at each other until Mr. Turnbull relented. "All right, but I want the pictures and any copies you have," he demanded. "No problem. You'll get the pictures when I have a signed document from the bank confirming my rightful claim," I replied. "You'll have it today," he said, turning to leave. "Just one more thing. I want the same lawyer you sent over yesterday to bring the paperwork," I added. "That would be amusing." "Anything else?" he asked sarcastically. "Nope, that's all I need," I said, grinning. He walked away briefly, then returned closer this time. "You know you'll never work in this town. Hell, this country ever again, you little jerk," he hissed. "Nice doing business with you," I chuckled as he walked away. I still had the emails between Turnbull and Jeremy, and I'd be handing them over to the fraud squad as soon as the money hit my bank account. The following days were quiet until a bank lawyer visited with some forms for me to sign, promising payment by Thursday. I handed him a thumb drive and hard drive with data, and he left looking disheartened. By Thursday, Georgia's situation had worsened. After confronting her boss while intoxicated, she was arrested for DUI and lost her license. That same day, her parents came to collect her belongings from my place. Meanwhile, Tom, Carl, and Tony were granted bail, though the prosecutor highlighted their case in a media statement about pills issues in the corporate sector. Jeff had disappeared, reportedly sent to a risky mining project in South America by Penny's family. That afternoon, I received a substantial sum, $720,000, into my bank account. The next day, fraud and securities detectives visited me to discuss some suspicious emails, which I admitted were obtained illegally, causing some frustration about their use in any legal action. Afterwards, finding a new job became challenging, as Mr. Turnbull seemed to have tainted my reputation within the banking industry. While contemplating my next steps, Penny Rhine-Hill offered me an escape, inviting me to join her on the family jet to Mauritius for an extended break at their luxurious compound. This spontaneous decision led to a 5-month hiatus filled with new adventures, not just with Penny, but others too, marking a wild chapter of my life. I returned mainly to witness Mr. Turnbull's trial on fraud and racketeering charges. Initially confident with a robust legal team, his composure crumbled by the end of the first day, as the prosecution presented compelling evidence of his involvement with Jeremy in the PR deal. Jeremy had turned state's evidence, agreeing to testify against Turnbull for a reduced charge, which led to the bank retracting its support. By the second day, the bank's legal team had abandoned him, leaving him with minimal representation and announcing their intention to recoup losses through civil actions. The prosecution quickly seized on this advantage, and the defense's desperate attempt to shift blame using footage of Turnbull, Jeremy, and Georgia failed to sway the narrative. Georgia and Jeremy were both dragged deeper into the scandal, with the media frenzy intensifying when they were summoned to testify. Despite the defense's efforts to discredit them, testimonies from Tom and Carl resonated with the judge, leading to Turnbull being formally charged. He eventually pled guilty, receiving a 2.5-year sentence, but managed to transfer his assets to his wife, who then filed for divorce, leaving him seemingly destitute. The Department of Public Prosecution capitalized on the high-profile case, pursuing charges against Jeremy and Georgia as well. Jeremy faced multiple charges, resulting in a 3-year sentence, while Georgia received a suspended sentence for her part in the recordings, though her public image suffered greatly. Throughout the ordeal, I was scrutinized and mislabeled in financial circles, which damaged my career prospects permanently. When no one will hire you, you have to make your own way. I started a venture capital firm focusing on environmental projects. I'm not rolling in dough, but I'm getting by and hopefully making a positive impact. Penny and I stayed in touch, but she was a bit of a player, and I wasn't. I'm still on the lookout, but my trust issues tend to get in the way. I just launched a project to restore some wetlands about 700 kilometers west of Sydney, way out in the true outback. Two mining companies and a bank are funding it to polish up their corporate images. I'll be living in an old homestead that used to be the main house for a massive sheep station along the Darling River. Hopefully, the fresh air and vast skies will bring me some better luck.